Hey, folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. Carlos, it's good to see you, my man. How's Florida treating you?
Good. It's warmer, although we almost drowned last night. So we thought the house was going to fall down here in Lakeland. And we got such a terrible storm that came through. It was loud, lightning, but it's our colleague Jeff Seidel was complaining because it was a gray day yesterday. He's like, well, we weren't supposed to be in Michigan. It was going to just either rain or be sunny. Like, get it out of the way. But it's been warm. When you can walk around in shorts pretty much every day, you're doing well in March.
Oh, that's good. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying your time down there. We're going to talk a little bit about the Tigers, but you wrote a really interesting column about Spencer Torkelson that I think, in my humble little opinion, sort of sets up and ties into. I mean, you could always, I guess this is sort of evergreen. You could always say this is true about sports, but I just think it fits nicely into a lot of the different storylines and narratives that are going around the teams that we covered, the Free Press, the 4 pro teams, and the two colleges, the 2 college basketball teams in particular. Football, not so much right now, but I want to read a line for our listeners. It's a quote actually from AJ Hinch. He's talking about Spencer Torkelson, and you wrote in your very, very good column that the path Torkelson has taken is an interesting one. Right? The top pick, comes out, struggles, comes up, shows some flashes, goes back, struggles some more, and then finishes last year on a tear and ends up with 31 home runs. And I think as you pointed out, 29 of them in the last 5 months. And just the patience that it took, and all the work, obviously, also, but just the patience that it took for him to get there. And this is what A.J. Hinch in your column said about this. He said, I think the other lesson, he's talking about the couple of lessons Torkelson can sort of show. Your main point, I should tell listeners, was that Torkelson can be a model for how young hitters can get to where he's gotten to, sort of following his path. And then you mentioned Riley Green. He took a slightly different path, but at least he's a model out there. And so Hinch is sort of talking about that and showing that. Anyway, this is what he says. I think the other lesson is more for us. He's talking about Torkelson's path. Coaches, managers, fans, I'm highlighting fans there, everybody, to have patience. And the Torkelson, quote, needed to ramp up success in order to learn how to play at this level. And our patience as an industry has grown thinner and thinner. And I think that's really the key. And I think that's true in all sports. And if you'll just indulge me for a second, Carlos, if you go down the list and you apply that word patience, all right, should U of M be patient with Juwan Howard and give him another year to see if he can get a little bit back to where he was? Should Michigan State fans be patient with Tom Izzo and see if he can get back to where he was? What about Red Wings fans? They've shown a lot, the Red Wings have shown a playoff capability here. How patient or not are they going to be with the trade deadline coming up in a couple of weeks? The Detroit Lions, we're about to go into free agency, the NFL draft, and we're going to, in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about a little bit more about the draft and cornerbacks in particular, and Brad Holmes' relationship with quarterbacks. But how much patience is required there, or should there be for the Lions? Should they allow this to keep building? Not allow, they're going to do what they're going to do, but should fans say, hey, they're going to just keep building? We're going to trust that? Or do they need to adapt and change because they got a Super Bowl window? I read your column and I said, wow, it's perfect for what so many teams are going on. How about the Detroit Pistons? I mean, how much patience do they deserve? Should Troy Weaver get another chance or not? What about Monty Williams, his first year? He's finally messing with the rotation in a way that looks like it's helping a little bit. Shouldn't it have taken 4 months? I mean, again, it all comes down to patience. So thank you for setting that up and tapping into, as you would say, the zeitgeist, a word I've never used, but used like you like to use as some kind of a metaphor. But you unwittingly or wittingly, I don't know, but you've tapped into what's really happening in our sports scene right now with this column about Torkelson.
Yeah, I think that, you have to go, first of all, we were doing a radio show. The call-in board would be like screaming red from Lions fans of, 7 years of patience, buddy. Don't be asking any more patience right now. And that's, but it's the point is that it's different, right? Every team is different. Sharon Moore, right? It's going to be his first year. As the Michigan football coach. So yeah, I think you should be patient, but whatever. If they go 0-12,
Michigan State coach. right?
Yeah,
And
Michigan State's
Jonathan
coach.
Smith.
Absolutely. That should take time. Now, Juwan Howard, we've seen quite a bit in the last 2 years. Tom Izzo, we've seen a lot over the last couple decades. And, so everybody I think has a different, standard or whatever, a barometer where you can measure them by, and the Red Wings are an interesting case because it's, this is Derek Lalonde's the coach, but it's really about Yzerman in many ways. And so, it's hard to say, but I do think, and the other part, if you read the column, the thing I mentioned after Hinch's, comments is that it is like asking, in today's world, it's a little unrealistic to really ask or require or demand, whatever you want to say, patience from people, from fans, from the outside world, because we just don't have a lot of it anymore. It's just everything in our, you and I are old enough. We grew up at a time before the internet and really before ESPN, around the clock games and whatever. And you could have more patience because the world just worked at a slower pace. Information came at a slower pace now. And that was one of the things I talked about to Torkelson about was, this whole hype machine, the internet, everything makes everything seem so easy. The Torque bombs, everything becomes a GIF or a meme or whatever. It's all part of the hype. It's part of the hype that gets these people paid a lot of money. But, there's a second side to that is people aren't going to wait around as long as they used to. They're paying more and more for everything, for the tickets, for the merchandise, for the parking, for the food. And so there is a higher demand. You're not getting into the Comerica, Tiger Stadium for $4, seats, upper level seats and whatever, and parking around the corner for free. That's just not happening anymore. And that's part of it. He's right. AJ Hinch is right. If you're basing this solely on how does somebody succeed, do you give it the room, the space? A lot of it also, probably had to do with switching the regimes and Scott Harris and bringing in his guys and how they had a different approach to. But it depends. I mean, I think to me, I don't know how you think, Sean, but to me, when someone's beginning, when they're starting out, a player or a coach, there should be some more patience. I mean, even with Marnie Williams, it's his first year. Maybe Troy Weaver doesn't stick around. Troy Weaver probably doesn't deserve the patience because he's been around long enough. But I think when the people are starting out, you unless there's some egregious, malpractice of coaching or playing or whatever it is, then maybe that's something different. But generally, I like to be a little more patient with younger coaches or players or just starting out with their teams.
Well, I think it's interesting too. But it depends on, like Izzo's a good test case, not a good test case, but it's interesting because of his resume, but also because of the recent history. I mean, not just this season. I mean, they've struggled this season, especially. It's funny that their struggle is an NCAA tournament bubble, but relative to the expectation at the beginning of the season, they have absolutely struggled. And then it's this same group, and they're led by, it's a senior heavy group, and they've had similar struggles for the last, this is the fourth year in a row now that they've been kind of like this. I guess the first year was right after COVID. So if you're a Michigan State fan, but more importantly, if you're a Michigan State, board member or whatever, you're the president or big donor, whatever. I mean, what do you think when you see this coach? I mean, do you have the patience to say, okay, can he get this turned around back to his level? Because we're judging against his own level, right? The standard that he has set. Michigan State's fan base has the expectations they do because of Tom Izzo, right? So it's a little bit, I mean, it's not apples to apples with Juwan Howard, but he hasn't had 5 years of struggle, right? He had 3 good years, and now he's had 2 years of struggle. That's where it gets gray to me. That's where it gets tricky. Now you can look at Howard's, incident with John Sanderson, who, by the way, the strength and conditioning coach who resigned last week from the school after kind of leaving the basketball program for, he was working with Olympic sports, I guess, the last couple of months. Or his, it took a swing at the assistant coach of Wisconsin. I can never remember his name. Was it Kravenhoff? Forgive me. I can't remember. But yeah, so that, I mean, going after Turgeon. So there's other stuff that would color that. Yzerman, we know Red Wings fans, I think, have been fairly patient with him because they believe in him and because he built a cup winner before he got here. If he didn't have that on his resume, how would Red Wings fans be reacting? I mean, maybe not so much right now because they've been winning, although they got, we saw the difference between them and the elite last weekend against Florida. But yeah, no, so each case is a little bit different, but it does kind of come down to what Hinch is saying about our society. And your point's a good one about the slow society. But here's my question to you is, okay, fine. So the fan base, as each team, are going to be more impatient because of the nature of our world. But should the teams, should the general managers and the coaches and the owners and or the college administrators, athletic directors, school board presidents, that sort of thing, should they change the way they evaluate and when they're looking at things because of how society has changed? I mean, obviously, to your point about putting the genie back in the bottle, it's not going to happen with the fan base. But what about the people who make the decision?
Yeah, it's everybody's clock has been sped up, and more, college sports, specifically college sports, they've become huge revenue machines, the revenue sports, obviously. And, anytime you throw a lot of money into the mix, you get power, you get politics, you get, less patience for things. I mean, you bring in Juwan Howard, you're not bringing him in just like, well, let's just see how we do. Okay. You're expecting big things. This guy's a legend in the program. And, you don't, I mean, it depends on who you are, right? If you're someone like Michigan or Michigan State, you're expected to compete for championships. If you're Middle Tennessee State, maybe not as much, so it just depends on who you are. But yeah, I don't think that, I mean, administrators and, Ward Manuel, I assume you're speaking more about him a little bit, but yeah, it's going to be, the thing with him is you have to look at it as, and he says he doesn't like to make, decisions during the season. So he's going to wait. Great. That's part of his patience too, right? He's saying, and it's also a little bit of a way of saying, don't ever ask me because I'm not going to give you an answer. Don't keep asking me about what am I going to do with Juwan? I'm going to wait till after the season and we'll make a decision or whatever. But he's got to think about, his two big programs, right? You're going to transition from a national championship winning team and coach to a rookie head coach. And who knows how that's going to go. You're losing a lot of talent from that team, and then you may have another, it wouldn't be surprising if Michigan struggled in football. And then you have the basketball team, and you already have 2 years of not great basketball to pretty bad basketball. And now you're looking into moving into a third year of that, coupled with a football team that could likely struggle. Do you really want that? And that's part of the politics and the optics of this is if he makes a move and gets rid of Juwan or brings somebody else, at least it looks like, hey, I'm doing something. And I think that's part of it, to me is I appreciate when coaches and general managers and administrators, when they do something out of conviction. I mean, it's hard to know if it's really conviction or how pure that is, but when they're not swayed by the outside noise. I mean, I appreciate that actually about Brad Holmes, for instance, that he doesn't like to listen to the outside noise. He likes to prove people wrong. But there's also, when you're struggling, the reality is you need to do something to defend your job. Everybody's got a job. Everybody's got a boss. And sometimes it's not good enough to just say, I really believe in this. I like the guy. I like what they're saying. And I understand there have been issues, but I believe in this person, because you've got bosses. He's got bosses, the regents and the president and everything else. And you got to sell tickets. You got to bring people into the program. You got to keep that thing going. And it's not enough sometimes to just, these guys understand, in sports, Jim Caldwell used to say this all the time. We'd ask him, like job security. It almost seemed like a yearly thing in November. What is your job security? And he had a great answer. He's like, this is a day-to-day business or week-to-week business, whatever he used to say. Like, there's no guarantee of anything. And I think they understand that. The people who get into these high-profile positions as coaches and athletes as much necessarily, you can be benched at any time too. They understand that. It's just, it's part of what it is when you're dealing in those elite levels. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that administrators are immune from from this. You've got to answer to somebody.
You do, and you're weighing as I think you use the word optics. You're weighing that, and also the business model, ticket sales, and so on and so forth. You're weighing that against fundamental HR decisions, basically, right? And how you think about your company or your institution, and how you think about the hiring and firing process. I mean, because those are still out there. It's just in a context of being under a microscope with a lot of money at stake, where the business can sway wildly from one season to the next, and the profits can too. And so that's certainly all part of it. Howard's interesting to me because, I mean, and you wrote about Howard. We've both written a little bit about him. You wrote more specifically about whether he should be back or not in Ward Manuel, and you mentioned Jim Harbaugh, and a lot of people have. Well, look what he did with Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh obviously had a lot more of a resume. It's not really close when you compare it to Howard's. Having said that, the reason Howard's interesting to me is because, and I've talked to people up there who think he's a good coach. And I think if you watch, this year's tough for sure, but if you watch the way his teams have played, you can see that. He runs good stuff. They're organized in general over the course of his time there. And the places that really, really make a difference, especially late in games and coming out of huddles, sideline out of bounds, baseline out of bounds, just the kind of philosophies they have. I mean, the guy came from one of the best basketball minds in the world in Miami, and he's got a really good basketball mind, and they think that privately even now, that he's a really, really good coach. The question they're grappling with is, can he build a program? And is he at the right level? Would he be better off in the NBA, where it's just basketball? And you don't have to, I mean, in the NBA, he's got a general manager to put the team together, right? It's very, very different. And that's what they're grappling with. Can he build a program? Can he create the structure for 18 and 19-year-olds? Can he make sure they're doing what they need to do on the road? Is he giving them too much? Right? I mean, this is what Ward Manuel is trying to figure out, because somewhere in there is a potentially really good coach, but is this the place for him? Not just Michigan, but just college basketball at this level. And does he have the patience and all of that? And that's what he's struggling with. And I think that's really interesting. And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I don't know that Ward Manuel knows the answer to that, but he's got to go with his gut and take all the other factors you're talking about, all the other outside factors, and say, okay, is it worth taking a risk that he can figure all this out that'll allow the best parts of himself to shine through?
Well,
that's a gamble. That's a big gamble.
It's a big gamble. And let's not forget, when Juwan Howard came into the program, when he was hired, what did everybody assume? Once his kids get through the program, he's going to the NBA, and especially when he was winning at first and making the tournament the first couple of years, everyone's like, oh, well, yeah, this is a no-brainer. He's just biding his time with his kids, whatever. But he really belongs in the NBA. That's really where, the thought, the rumors were that he prefers the NBA. Because you said, I mean, and that's the thing is, like you mentioned, you take this all in totality, all the shenanigans, the dust ups with his own strength coach, with the other coaches, not letting Doug McDaniel, get ineligible for not eligible, but he's not playing on the road games. Like, he wasn't on top of that. How do you not let your star guard make sure this guy is eligible so you can play road games? I mean, that's your fault for not being on top of that. That lacks, institutional control. It speaks to that a little bit,
Can I say this real quickly?
Sure.
To your point, can I add that? So I can tell you this. I've been told one of the issues is a lack of overall discipline, right, and structure, and not that it's a free for all, but that, considering their age and the way they do things, and I don't want to get into too many specifics, but let me just say that's been one of the concerns.
Absolutely. And that, and that's the thing, Sean, is like, we talk about this. This is, I think people understand, I hope they understand, sports fans, is that it's just because you're good at one level or one part, college or pros, it doesn't mean that's going to work in both cases. And that the challenge with Jim Harbaugh, who's, a great football coach, you put him down there on the sidelines, You get him coaching players. He's really good at that. I don't care what level it is. If it was at University of San Diego, Division II, or Stanford or whatever in the pros. But the thing with him is, how do you get along with him? How does he, managing up has always been a challenge for him, dealing with administrators, dealing with general managers and team owners. That's the thing with him. And, I don't know if there's a perfect coach out there who can do all of it really well in any setting. And that's with Howard. I mean, I think you're right. I think he belongs more, just pure basketball. Let him do that, because it is, I really don't, I think Harbaugh actually likes the recruiting process and working with young guys and all that. Like, he enjoys it. I think he seems to enjoy that more than the pros, which has its own, guys are worried about contracts and playing time and this, and it's a job. I mean, these are men and their jobs and what careers and their legacies. But in college, you coach them up, you build somebody, you mold them. I think you really enjoy that part of it. But frankly, like, it's not for everybody, man. I mean, the recruiting, now with NIL and you have to worry about so many, especially at a university, there's so many layers, there's so many people involved in the decisions and what you're doing and, fundraising and boosters and all. It's endless in a way that the pros don't have that as much, those many layers. And I never understood why anybody would be a college coach if you can be a pro coach and you really love the sport, in its purest form. But it's everybody has a different appetite. And just the last thing I would say about that is just the one thing you have to remember this is, like, Juwan Howard, was he really, I don't know. I don't remember, but was he really going to be a hot name in the college circuit being the coach, or is it because he was going to be a fit for Michigan and the president can say, we've got Juwan Howard. Now boosters start writing those checks because we got, one of the program, icons, and everybody was really happy. It's a business decision, it made sense.
Yeah, he was. His name was buzzing around the NBA as a good basketball mind, right? I mean, that's the thing, and I've been told too that he loves, even at Michigan, he loves the development part of it. Like, if that's again all there was, like, he loves to teach. He's a film room geek. You know what I mean? And I love that about him because it busts up. And I know that stereotype is mostly gone, but it still lingers out there from time to time. You think, oh, here comes a black coach. He's going to recruit well and shake hands well and do all that. Well, Howard, that's the part of the stuff he doesn't love. He's a film geek. He's like a basketball geek in the best way.
He's you. He's a less cerebral Sean Windsor. Let's just say it.
No. I don't know. Hey, listen, I'm around people that understand the game, and I do not. I mean, right? It's just something I enjoy, right? But I'm not like that. I mean, that's one of the keys to life, and one of the grateful things about one of the good things about getting older is you realize just how little you know, and the difference between somebody that really knows what they're doing and somebody who's just, yeah. I mean, it's because it's liberating, right? It's liberating. It's the same in our business. You get to a certain point, you're like, hey, I do okay. I try, I work hard, I try to figure stuff out, I try to get better, but there are people out there that are just better, and that's okay. And you don't care, it burns your butt when you're in your 20s, maybe into your 30s, but you get to a certain age, you're just like, hey, that person's just better. That's okay. And I'm gonna keep plugging and try to get better myself, but I'm not gonna judge myself against them. I feel like that's freeing.
Yes.
But in any case, all right, let's, I didn't necessarily mean to talk about Howard so much, but it was a really good column, and it's just so key to how we consume and view and think about sports and spectator sports and our culture right now. And I thought it was incredibly timely about a hitter who's, by the way, Torkelson is as fun and engaging and a professional athlete as you'll talk to, right? I hope that doesn't change.
Yeah, he's got such a good head on his shoulders, and for a guy who was the number one overall pick, I think Arizona, State, with the exception of maybe Barry Bonds, puts out pretty good pros. They have a good program there, and he's so easy to talk to, and this is his team. If it's not his team now, it's going to be his team. He's just going to be the leader, the guy that everybody goes to. And, so he's one of the bright spots. I like Riley Green too a lot, but I think this is going to be Torque's team for a while.
I think so. Well, really, really good column. And thanks for kind of tapping into what's really the theme, because we had a decade of just misery for so long, and now we've got interesting teams at various stages, and patience is really the theme with all of it, and so that was really, really tough. All right, let's take a quick break. Come back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean, and Carlos can talk about cornerbacks and hips, I guess, how people swivel their hips. I think that's what you want to talk
hips,
about. All right, yeah. Fluid. We'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. All right, let's talk cornerbacks, because you apparently have a fetish for them. You love the way they move. You like to study their technique. Is that right? Is that what's happening here?
The underpinning to my life is cornerback play, Sean. Fluid hips and quick twitch and all that. That is what defines me as a person.
You want to change your career and become a cornerbacks coach.
I want to be so what I really want is I want to be a cornerback. I don't want to be a coach. I want to be a cornerback. And I'm willing to make Brad Holmes an offer right now. Emmanuel Mosley played 2 snaps and got $5 million last year. I will guarantee him 3 snaps for $4 million. I mean, I'll make him that deal right now if he's willing to take my call. Does that sound good to you?
That sounds fine. That sounds fine. Yeah.
I can get 3 snaps. I know I can do 3 snaps in the NFL. I can that much.
It's funny. I was thinking about that. I saw that signing and it immediately made me think about just how differently we think about ACLs. I mean, Achilles are still different. I mean, Achilles, you're almost never the same. I mean, although that's gotten better too. I think more about basketball with that. But with the ACL, it used to be you tore your ACL and you were, in football, that was a lot of times the end of your career. And if you did come back, you weren't anywhere near the same. And that's just not the case anymore. It's amazing how much that's changed. I don't know if you thought about that when you saw the signing.
No, I mean, that's been true for a long time. So, but yeah, you're right. Sports science is amazing. Nothing stops anybody anymore, really, other than significant knee problems.
Well, ACL is pretty significant, but and painful too. I've torn both of them, but Achilles, yeah, that's one of the few things where you're maybe not the same. But anyway, so you wanted to talk about cornerbacks and the Lions and their obvious need for one, not just one, but a number one. And I guess you never know that Mosley's not a number one. That's not been his MO, but he could be a number 2 or
a 3 or 4.
It gives him more depth as a, nickel packages or whatever, I guess. Although they seem to have some pretty, really, really good young players for those spots. Brian Branch comes to mind. But what's your thinking? You wanted to talk about what I wrote about cornerbacks the other day.
Yeah, you had an interesting column about how the recent Super Bowl champs have all had really good cornerback play, elite cornerback play.
Yeah,
but they all come from different places. That's the problem. There's no formula for they have to be first round picks. So that's the tricky part: is where do you find them? How do you find them? Because the Lions, at least under Brad Holmes, haven't worked too hard to find and draft or whatever true outside cornerbacks. They did a good job with Brian Branch, kind of a tweener, nickel guy, safety potential, whatever, But how do you find these guys? Because it's really hard.
It is really hard, and I guess the other part of the argument, and I made this a little bit in a different, but is this the idea of, if you're looking at the Lions roster, why cornerback is so important? Well, to me, there are a couple of things. One, and I just think this has to do with the evolution of the game a little bit. And maybe you shouldn't say evolution. That makes it sound like it's better. Just change. It's just different. The mobility of quarterbacks, which means the prevalence of run-pass option quarterbacks, if you're going to run the RPO, defensive linemen, particularly edge rushers and the defensive ends, let's just say, in that scenario, important because they're the ones, along with maybe the linebackers on the edge or whatever, have to diagnose is he going to hand or pass. But it takes away traditional pass rush in that play. There's no way an edge can get to, if it's an RPO and it's a handoff, there's no way the edge rusher can get there unless somebody misses a blocking assignment. So that right there is shrinking the amount of downs where you have to have a defensive end get into the quarterback. Another part, and to me, the maybe more important part is how quickly quarterbacks get the ball out, right? I mean, first of all, so often they're not dropping back from the center, right? They're already back, and they get the ball, and it's a screen pass, or it's a 2-second slant, or a dig, or a hitch, or whatever, and it's just bam, 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 and the ball gets out so quickly. The pass rush, at least from the outside, isn't going to do anything. The best pass rushers in the world aren't going to get there in time, right? So how do you stop that? How do you slow that down? We've seen, I mean, obviously it's an offensive game right now, but how do you the best way to slow that down is with great cornerback play and, to a degree, safety and linebacker play, right? But you got to have somebody that can stick with all these talented receivers that are all over the league and try to disrupt the timing. The best way to do it, maybe arguably, is and Aaron Glenn runs this kind of system, and we saw this in Steve Spagnuolo's system with Kansas City. He blitzes a lot. He's got his cornerbacks, and he's got two of the best in the business, maybe arguably the best tandem in the league, or at least he did last year, and they're pressing, and they're ruining they're busting up the timing. And we saw that through the playoffs. I mean, Chris Jones is a great, great player. And by the way, he doesn't just line up outside. He lines up in the middle, which is the best pressure you can get, period. But in conjunction with these really good cornerbacks messing up the timing, look what they did to Baltimore and Buffalo and mostly to Kansas City. How many times did Purdy go back and there's nowhere to go? I mean, I know Jones got to him a couple of times, but most of that defense he's like, where's he going? And I don't know. That might change in another 5 years, Carlos. But right now, with the level of quarterback play, the level of receiver talent, the level of tight end talent, how do you and how quickly these offenses get the ball out? We see with the Lions. Goff's got it, boom. Third and long, you need a defensive line. Absolutely. You can't get the quarterback all day to go back and try to pick up 10, 11 yards. But so that's interesting. So that means the cornerbacks are even more and more critical, and the Lions don't have anywhere close to a dominant shutdown cornerback. And how do they get one? And you're right, there are lots of ways to get them.
Yeah, I think that cornerbacks have been pivotal for a long time. I mean, you're dating to the times of the Deion Sanders. And the problem with cornerbacks a little bit, and I don't know exactly what Holmes's philosophy is. He's never really vocalized it specifically, or whether he would volunteer this information. But they get hurt a lot. They're asked to do a lot. Tackling and blitzing and whatever, but run support. And they play a really physical game. They have a fair amount of contact. So, the proposition isn't necessarily great in spending a lot of money on these guys or high draft picks. If you believe that, I've definitely heard coaches say that before, and, they get hurt, and everybody has different philosophies, and there's not one true, just general thing of, this is how you build a team and what you value. And the other problem too is if you have a shutdown corner, you can. I mean, this is what Deion did. This is what Jalen Ramsey kind of did. The Rams, and they won is that they take away half the field, but you also have the other half of the field still throw to. So there's a way to avoid that. And a defensive line, there's no way to avoid the rush. And don't forget, they also run the ball still in football, so you need guys up front. It's changed somewhat, but for a long time, and I think they still believe this in general, is that the defensive line is the engine of the defense. It makes everything else work. They base everything off of that. What they do with their scheme, and how they do the pressure and all that. Yes, and the RPO, and you can get the ball out quick, but the NFL isn't about getting the ball out really quick on short little, West Coast quick, slants anymore. It's about throwing deep. It's about explosive plays. That's, I think, where the game has really gone more that way. And all the rules have helped them with that. It's only gotten worse and worse for the defense because the NFL wants scoring. So, you're much better off throwing deep. There's a lot of good things that can happen when you do that. yeah, you can beat the pass rush. If you just want to beat the pass rush and get 3 yards when you need 6, you can do that. They will let you do that. But when you need 6 yards or you need 7 or, 12 and it's second down, that changes the calculus, right? I still think that there's a reason that edge rushers are still at a premium, but with the Lions, I mean, definitely think, they need Cam Sutton was a disappointment. So I don't think they even have I don't even know if he's a great number 2 option, honestly. So right now, they almost have 2 open spots. They signed Sutton to a 3-year deal, so he's got 2 more years left. So they're not going to get rid of him probably, but those cornerbacks, those outside cornerbacks are a concern. I don't think anybody should be really comfortable with, going into the season with Cam Sutton and someone else who's not a true number 1 outside guy.
No, for sure. For sure.
Shutdown is hard. It's a hard word. Shutdown. How many cornerbacks were shut? Not that many, but just a very good cornerback.
Lead cornerback. How about that? Who's going to play? Who's going to play a boundary? Who's got the boundary cornerback? Whatever. Right.
Yes.
So
and who has production, and so that's where it's you need to do something, and whether it's the draft or it's free agency, Snead is the guy. The Bears guy. He's probably not going to shake loose, so it's probably going to be Snead as the top guy. Well, and it's interesting because one thing just the last thing I was going to say is, the one thing that Brad Holmes said, has said, is that, he's probably not going to spend huge on a free agent unless it's a true difference maker, and the one guy you can think of in a free agency, if he makes it a free agency, is Chris Jones. He's a difference maker. There's no question about it. He's a difference maker. You can talk about his age or whatever, but right now he is a difference maker. And right now your window is open. Probably, as he said at the comment, I think to the writers there, that he doesn't believe he's in that less need Rams window. We just need to add 2 or 3 free agents and we win the Super Bowl. He wants to keep building, it's this kind of sustainable model. So I hope he's right. I hope there's a decade left.
Gets back to what we were saying earlier on the top of the show, the first part of the show, right? The idea of patience and should the Lions be allowed to, from the fan perspective, obviously they're going to do what they're going to do, but be allowed to keep building the way they've been building, to follow whatever internal plan they have, and hope that they get there, or fans are going to start to turn them. I think obviously defensive line really matters, and edge rushing is important, but I don't know that this is a coincidence. I think this is real. There are a couple of reasons. There's a few things that are interesting that are going on right now. One, and I don't know if it's going to be a total trend. We always saw with Sauce Gardner, but we're seeing more and more rookie cornerbacks come in and be really good right away. And that didn't always used to be the case, right? It used to take a little bit of time. I mean, running back was the one spot where you come in as a rookie, you get the ball and you go. Not that you're not going to get better, but you can be really good right away. Obviously, quarterback's probably the trickiest one, although then C.J. Stroud. I don't know. Maybe it's just the coaching at college levels. I mean, that's a different conversation. Why are more and more young guys coming in at more and more positions and being Pro Bowl level right away? I mean, we're seeing it more and more. It's Snead's teammate, L'Jarius Snead's teammates in McDuffie, who was a rookie 2 years ago. He came in, he got hurt. I think he pulled his hamstring. I want to say pulled his hamstring on the season opener, didn't play for 6 or 7 games, and he came back and played. And the difference in their passing defense numbers was incredible with him and without him. And now again, it's got Snead on the other side there. So maybe you can say, okay, when you get 2 of them like that, that's just, and yeah, Chris Jones is their best defensive player, but the difference in numbers that year and their passing defense, I mean, it's crazy. What happens when, I mean, you see that with that level of cornerback. I'm not saying that Holmes, to your point, can go find that, but to me, Snead would be worth it, unless Holmes is convinced he can find one. Speaking of McDuffie, he was picked at number 21. The Chiefs had this 2 years ago. The Chiefs had the 29th pick. They traded with New England, gave up a 3rd and a 4th round to go get him. Is that worth it? Would that be worth it? I mean, I don't know if Holmes would want to give up. They like the way they draft. They believe in their ability. But would that be worth it to go up and get a cornerback? Can he do, and I mentioned this in the column, can he go find a cornerback, Carlos, in the first round, late in the first round, or early in the second round, and do what Laporte has done? Because that's what he's got to do. If he's gonna put all his eggs in the draft basket for a cornerback, then it's got to be Gibbs or Laporta.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's the cornerbacks tend to be all over the place. You know, just because you're a first round pick. You know, the one guy I don't know if it was accidental or you just whatever had some amnesia, but you never mentioned Jeff Okudah.
No, Okudah, it doesn't work for sure. It doesn't always work.
And the thing with Okudah is you'd probably be drafted again that high because, you know, he was productive. He was smart. He was committed. He was the prototype of what you want in any football player.
He was,
and it just didn't work.
He was slow. He was slow.
Well, yeah, maybe he might have been a little slow, but he was a little slow for sure. But that wasn't it. I mean, he was, you know, being beat on double moves and this and that. Speed is important. It's not the most. I mean, Tease Tabor was really slow, and that was a mistake. Yeah, you know, and true. Like you know, and he was really slow. Okudah was not, you know, that slow, but it was just, you know, to me, I don't. If Snead sounds like he's going to shake loose, and I think what they're saying, the report is that they want a second round pick, and he's going to need $20 million a year. To me, I make that move because you're not guessing. You know, this guy is productive. He's still pretty young. It's like 27 or something.
He's 27.
The question, the thing we don't know that they will never tell us, you know, is does he fit the Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, gritty thing, you know, the team guy, the gritty guy, the guy who works hard and all about football. And does he fit the culture? I hate to say culture, but does he fit the culture for the line? So if that's not true, then they're not going to get him. They're not going to do that. But if it is true, if they feel he can be a fit, I think that's a price that you pay. I mean, I would pay it tomorrow. You know, he instantly upgrades a huge position of need for you, and you don't have to get. And you're hoping for Sauce Gardner, but there's no magic. And traditionally, like you said, I mean, maybe across the board, guys are more, you know, NFL ready when they come in. But
you still got to get lucky.
Traditionally,
you got to get lucky, right?
You got to get lucky. But cornerback has traditionally always been a slower.
It has.
There's a bigger arc, you know, learning arc.
It has.
Tight end too. But Laporta broke that model, which is why he got so much attention. Because, like, how was he doing?
No,
they kept saying it every week.
For sure, he broke that model. You know, but I wonder if it's changing with cornerback. Like Devin Weatherspoon was really good for Seattle, and I know obviously we've heard reports that Holmes wanted him in last year's draft, right? And it ended up working out.
The top cornerback taken last year was Emmanuel Forbes for Washington, 16th overall. He did nothing. Like it's like any other spot. You know, you're going to take. I mean, we say this all the time. Drake May from North Carolina, Caleb Williams from USC, JJ McCarthy's moving up the boards. Jaden Daniels from LSU. That's 4 quarterbacks that are going to go in the top 15, maybe for sure, top 20. Yeah, how many are going to be great? One. I mean, maybe it'll be one of those years where there are 2 or 3, but most years you take several quarterbacks, only one's going to be really good. How do you know which one that is? Right now, JJ McCarthy's listening to this podcast is like, it's going to be me.
Yeah, that's what he might be. No, but to your point, that's the thing, right? You just don't, and it's the same with cornerbacks, right? Yeah, you got to get lucky a little bit. Although Holmes probably feels like it's not just luck on their part. I'm sorry, go ahead.
A long time ago, Gunther Cunningham said this. You know, former Lions coach, late Lions defensive coordinator. He said, he played quarterback in college, and he said, you know, there's only 2, this is a while back, but there's only 2 guys you pay on the field, a cornerback and a quarterback, because those guys are on an island. But I kind of disagree, because the quarterback, even though it's the most demanding position in sports, you can do things to help them. If you have a really good run game, they got a really good offensive line. If you got there's things you can do to help. I mean, Brock Purdy is a good example.
So
right?
Jared Goff,
an elite, or Goff makes a good case too for that. If you, with the right pieces, you know, but a quarterback is on an island. An outside quarterback is on an island, and you can get some help over the top from safety, whatever, but you got to go play man to man. You can't hide. That's the one position where you cannot hide. And that's, to me, what makes this this so much more difficult is that, generally speaking, I think in college, it's always, to me, college football, it's hard to judge the defenses because the defenses, I think, are generally worse. But when you have a really good cornerback, then the offenses tend to stay away from them. And, it's like, it's a hard thing to judge. In the NFL, everybody's good and they're going to come after you. They're going to test you, until you can prove that you're Dion or someone and shut you down and get a pick or whatever. They're going to test you and rookies right away. And those receivers are really fast, really smart, and so it's a lot. It's impressive when guys like Sauce Gardner do what they do right off the bat.
Yeah, for sure.
Maybe they'll do more of that, but I don't know. And cornerbacks are generally just not, I don't think they're taken very high.
No, they're not.
Because,
and I wonder if that's going to change, Carlos. We've had 3 in 3 years now be good right away. McDuffie, Gardner, Witherspoon was really good this year for Seattle. And so that's just one a year. I don't know if that's a trend or not, but that it is interesting to think.
So you can get one every year. One guy is available every year.
That's really the point. This Holmes bet that hey, this guy can come in and be really good right away because recent history shows it's possible. But still, what are those odds? Right? No, you're right. It's much more of a sure thing to go get Snead. But if you're them, can you talk yourself into saying, hey, we don't want to give up draft capital. Let's put some serious resources into getting the guy we want, and let's see if it works. And if it doesn't work, then he's going to take the heat. Let's get back to your theme about patience. But real quickly, the other thing, and you were talking about the defensive line earlier, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but from my perspective, you look at their roster, I think the cornerback is what they need by far and away, more than anything else. That one spot. Because the defensive line, I'm not saying that they don't need another edge rusher to help Hutchinson and for depth, injury depth, whatever. But at least if you look at the defensive line, first of all, they got potentially a stud in Hutchinson. He's already a Pro Bowl level player. Can he take, you mentioned Chris Jones earlier. I'm not saying he's Chris Jones, but Chris Jones went from good, really, really good to great his second to third year. Can Hutchinson take another step? I don't know. Maybe he can. Ellie McNeil, can he get better? Josh Paschal, can he get good? He's shown flashes here and there, but no consistency at all. What about Broderick Martin? Can James Houston come back and rediscover the formula? At least you can look at that room and say there's potential for them to get better just organically, just as the young guys get older. You can't say that in the cornerback room. Who? Right? I mean, Vildor a little bit. I mean, he showed a little bit of promise. Maybe he could develop into a number 2, but not a lot. He's not your shutdown, right?
Yeah. And that's where, again, we don't know what they think of Snead, if he fits the team culture. But if he does, you solve a big problem right away.
Huge.
And you can still use you have 2, 3, third round draft picks. You can move up into the second round if you want. You can draft another quarterback in the third round and develop them, but it doesn't put that pressure. There's, I don't see, why there have to be a big reason. And you have a lot of cap space, by the way. I don't see why you just wouldn't do it unless there's something that they're just not going to ever tell us about it. But I don't know. I mean, they haven't, under Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, they have not signed any, top of the market free agent.
And it didn't make sense the first couple of years, but it makes sense now for a cornerback for sure. To your point, as long as they don't think he's going to come in and it's going to be an issue in the locker room, and hey, that matters. So fine, but then go find somebody else. You can't say all the free agents out there available. I know they're not a ton of them; they're a handful. Wouldn't fit. Somebody's got to fit, right?
Right. And you have to figure, guy's got 2 Super Bowls in his pocket. He can't be that bad of a teammate, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. He's got to have something. By the way, Carlos, he was a 4th round pick, right?
Right. Absolutely. There's no map for this at all. Nobody knows. I mean, Darius Slay was a 2nd round pick, really struggled his first year, got benched. And I think he got benched and, rebounded and became what, 6 Pro Bowls or something.
For sure. And by the way, your point, I mean, cornerbacks have always been important, but they're more important now than they've ever been, partly because the receiver talent is just so good, and tight ends are more receivers. And not that you need cornerbacks on tight ends, but just the passing games. And yeah, it's not West Coast. It's not just this West Coast, but there are plenty of quick plays. The Lions run a lot of them. And beyond that, you're lining up more, you're going 3-4 wide sometimes, right? So it's just hard to stop. And to your point, I mean, yeah, explosive plays down the field, but that's, can you stop a 3rd and 7? Do you have a cornerback that can stay with Justin Jefferson? I mean, maybe nobody can. I don't know. Maybe there's some guys that are just too good. St. Brown's really difficult to cover, right? When somebody knows how to get open like that, you're not going to stop. It's just, can you occasionally stop? Can you occasionally force a punt? Those are the margins where these high-level games are won. So it's really interesting. And by the way, when I played football, it's funny, my brother and I were talking about this the other day, Carlos, we were talking about the evolution of the cornerback and how important they are, because we're talking about the column. And my brother was a much better football player than I was. But we were talking about when we played, the coaches, the most important players when we played on defense were linebackers, because it was a running game, and the defensive line It was a running offense, and the defensive line was there to engage the offensive lineman and just sort of hang out with him and let the linebackers go make plays, right? So the linebackers were the stars of the team in a lot of ways. They were the stars in the high school hall. It's funny how that's changed. Linebackers used to be the studs, and then it became defensive ends, right? And then it started to become cornerbacks. It's just funny how it changes.
Well, it's also, I haven't gone to too many high school football games, but I went to one a couple of years ago, and it's still, they want to run the ball as much as possible because you do not have golden armed quarterbacks back there. And, we watch, a lot of Lions, a lot of college football, and even in college, they have really strong armed quarterbacks at the the Power 5 conferences. But watching a high school game, even a decent high school game, these guys look like they're throwing water balloons, compared to what college and pro quarterbacks can do.
You'd be surprised. I went to a couple of playoffs games this past year. A friend of the son played. I promised him I'd go to a game, and they were decent team, decent quarterback. They threw the ball up and down the field. Both teams did. And I know there's still some fun, wishbone type or what was the triple, whatever. I'm trying to remember. You see some of these fun run formations, and that's kind of fun. But it is amazing how much they throw. And some of the high school, I mean, relative to when I played, for sure, nobody threw.
Oh, well, yeah, a lot more, for sure. Yeah,
nobody threw at all. I mean, oh, wow, they're throwing.
What did you play? What was your position?
I was a receiver and a
oh no,
and a cornerback. I hate, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I could actually I could actually run. Yeah, I could run. And real quick, oh my God, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but I remember when I moved.
If only we had video.
I moved like I said, my brother was a much, much better player. And it's funny, the tight end on my team went and played at SMU. He was 6'5" and 240, could run. And back when SMU was like, this is in the Eric Dickerson days, you know what I mean? They were, but I'll never forget, I moved to Texas they had family stuff. The first varsity game, I'm out there and I go over the middle on a skinny post. I don't think we called them skinny posts back then. We just called them posts. I go over, I turn, I go over the middle, I turn, I catch the ball, I turn back, and boom, a safety just lights me up, and I fumble the ball, and I'm going, trotting back to the sideline, and there I'm hearing, oh, F that, yeah, I don't want to cuss here, but go back up north, because I'd come from the north, and back then the regional differences were so much more pronounced, and there was a lot more rivalry. And you Yankee, you can't. We play football down here. You can't hold on the ball and this and that. Oh, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. That was my junior year. Anyway, that's my football story. Not one of triumph.
That's fantastic.
Not one of triumph. Oh, anyway. All right, should we take a quick break and come back, or do we want to just roll right into your favorite thing?
No, Sean, I'm always ready. I was born ready. Let's do my favorite thing, and you can steal it as I'm talking.
No, I just want to be you. It's not that I'm stealing. It's flattery, right? I want to be you.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. all right, my favorite thing is simple. You can probably guess what it is, but being down here in Florida. And I saw your guy, Jim Leland, on Monday, came to the game at Joker Marchant. And it was nice. It was good to catch up with Leland. And he's just always fun. He's one of these, to me, he's just an old school throwback. Everybody knows this. I don't have to explain Jim Leland to anybody. But the more I thought about it, as we're sitting there, just leaning on the fence and, pregame and talking about players, talking about philosophy, talking about, just life and stuff. And I was just thinking, how precious it is to have, people like this and institutions. I mean, he's an institution. I was talking to somebody about Joe Louis the other day and how I missed Joe Louis Arena. It was a throwback, and you're just not going to see these things anymore. They're not going to make them like Jim Leland anymore. And it was just a really great time to be able to catch up and appreciate the time that we had to talk. And didn't get to play golf this year with him, unfortunately. He had some other stuff to do. It was just kind of bad timing. But yeah, it was really cool just being out there in the sun, looking at the field, looking at, fielding drills, talking baseball with the old Skip. It just doesn't get better than that, Sean.
Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, no, every time I'd go down there after he retired, it was different when he was managing, right? The intensity was different, the seriousness, it was completely different. But after he retired, when I'd run into him down there, it was always fun to sit and shoot the breeze. No, he's one of the best, right? Mine is, all right, how can I say this, Carlos? I want to keep this short, but I want to provide just a touch of context because I thought this was interesting. We were talking about basketball earlier, Detroit basketball and public school leagues, and how that's changed. And that's true across the country, and how the best basketball players in the high school basketball players in the country largely go to academies and prep schools and all that sort of thing. And that's fine. And it's more like a European model and how they do it in soccer. And for a long time, we've talked about that with at the university level, the college level, and how we're really the only ones in the world that associate these sports and identity with the academia and learning. Well, it's also true in high school. And I've talked a little bit about this. My son was a high school freshman coach this year, assistant varsity coach in the last game, which was a couple of weeks ago now. One of his assistants is a student here, but he's from Australia. And in the last game of the year, when we were kind of talking, and I was in the locker room afterwards, my son had invited me in. I sat on the bench a couple of times toward the end of the season. Anyway, the Australian assistant coach to my son was telling the kids, savor this. You don't know how lucky you've got it. We don't have anything like this in Australia. I'd never even heard or thought about the idea of secondary school with teams like that, where the community comes and watches, and it's not just a few parents at a soccer field or, on the side of a tennis court. If you're a swimming pool, swimming is really big in Australia, right? So, and he was talking about that, and I just thought that was really cool. All right. My favorite thing then is in that larger context of just sort of appreciating what high school sports can be for the kids, the team, all the lessons they get, but also just the communities, especially when they're a little smaller. But it doesn't really matter. It can be a community in a larger area too. So I was at a high school game Friday night. My son's Ann Arbor High School lost. Ann Arbor Skyline lost to Pioneer in the district semis on Wednesday. So Pioneer played Huron, which is another Ann Arbor school, on Friday. Crosstown rivals. They were, for the longest time, the only two high schools in the town. Skyline's still relatively new. They play at Huron. The state MSSAA rotates the high schools where you play. So just randomly they're playing at Huron. All right, the gym is packed. And my son went there with a bunch of his coaches, and they took some of the varsity players because they wanted their kids, which are their relatively young team, to feel that energy and that scene and that stage so if they get there next year, they're not intimidated, which I thought was really clever. So my son's there, some of the coaches. I sit with some parents I'd known from 6 or 7 years ago. I see some other coaches. I saw a couple of kids I used to coach and had some of them I haven't seen. So, and it's this packed gym. The game goes into overtime. It just was electric, Carlos. And when the game was won at the buzzer, the stands, the fans are storming the court and all that. But the energy in a high school gym at this time of the year, especially when it's a bonus when you get a rivalry in a packed gym. You're not talking about a lot of people, but that kind of energy, it's nothing like it. It's just, and it was just, I was just looking around, and my son called me up after the game. He's like, I can't wait till I can get to a point where I'm coaching. I'm the head coach in a game like that and a scene like that. I'm like, that's a great goal. All right. But it's because it doesn't, and then it's the winners moves on to the regionals, and the loser, that's the last time those kids will probably ever play organized basketball. So there's a lot at stake emotionally, right? I mean, there's no money at stake, but there's a lot at stake emotionally. It's like the end of your childhood in a way. And you're never going to be on a team like that again. That's a lot at 18, right? You probably had that with baseball. It's the end of something. So you feel the weight of that too. Anyway, that was my favorite.
That's great. And I think we've talked about this before, but when I was starting my career and I was covering preps, and I remember I was I never did this, but I don't know, the real prep guy, the leader or whatever, the prep czar was probably out that day. So they had me go to Glendora High School in LA. And this is where Tracy Murray, Cameron Murray went. And it must have been a rivalry game, a league game. And it was the closest thing to Cameron Stadium would be. Just packed, crazy. The kids are right on top. I remember they were looking at my computer like, what are you writing? You better write something good and all this. And it was, I'd never seen that before. I'd never covered a basketball game like that before. And it blew my mind. And I'm already like 20, 21 years old, whatever, college student, part-time. But you're right, Sean, it's bigger. It's bigger than money, because this is it. You're right. This is the end of, and you see this all the time in high school, like the senior day, whatever, the moms come out and whatever sport it is, and they're crying because they know this is the last. And you see even in college, right? The guys at state and whatever, they kiss the logo, the logo and all that. They know, like, a lot of them, they're just not going to go on.
That's true.
It's not going to happen.
That's true.
It's not going to be in the NBA. So that's really cool. I'm glad you
enjoyed it. I was just
reminded
of, and I'm biased, but basketball is, you're right there in the courts, especially at the high school level. The court's right there, and the kids are basically wearing a tank top and a pair of shorts. You're exposed. You're on a stage like no other sport, really. Maybe a pitcher,
nothing like
a pitcher on a pitching mound, kind of, maybe. But you're
wrestling.
Yeah,
wrestling.
You're right there, and it's the most performative of our sports in that way, and the pressure that goes with it, and the tension that goes with it. When you got a good game, it's just, there's nothing else like it. But anyway, so sorry.
Well, go watch, Iowa, Penn State wrestling, and you'll change your mind.
No, my brother wrestled, and I went to a few high school wrestling matches, and that was fun too. No, I was at a wrestling match in Wayne not that long ago. A friend of mine coaches. She's a science teacher at Wayne, and she got a job as an assistant wrestling coach. And she'd been texting me on and off all season, saying, "Hey, come watch." You don't have to write about it. I promise. Just come watch. I said, yeah. So I did. It was really fun.
They used to do in California, I don't know if they still do, but they would do, it was weird, in one of the sections of the southern section in LA, the Masters tournament was what you do to get to the state finals. And they would do the spotlight. They do it in a bigger gym. And it was like, if you ever saw Vision Quest, it was like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I always remember thinking, like, I was never close to that level, but it was like, I don't know if I could handle this. Like, you're in the spotlight, literally in the middle of, and that's all
like
they're
boxing,
watching,
right?
Like whatever it was, 6,000. Yeah, like boxing. It was a lot like boxing. And I was like, oh man. So yeah, wrestling is basketball. Basketball is just the best though when it comes to just high level, one-on-one. This is it for everything.
End of a game, the tension, and a 1-2 point game, tie game. Oh man, you can barely breathe, right? Even just a spectator, you're like, and I didn't have a rooting interest in that game Friday night. It was just being around all the kids I've watched growing up and helped coach, and the parents, and they would just, you don't get that. I mean, I might not get that again. That was just a really special night. So, and a random thing. All right. We've taken up way too much of your time. Thanks for staying with us. Carlos, who do we need to thank?
Let's do a quick. Producer Robin Chan, executive producers Kirkland Crawford and Anjanette Delgado, and editor of the Free Press, Cole Avery Nichols. But mostly Sean.
The listeners, of course. Thanks for joining us every week. It sure means a lot. It's look, Carlos and I would be talking and BSing anyway. We like to do it, but it's and by the way, it's fun to. I like to agree with you. It's fun. We were mostly on the same side today. It was nice for a change. It's like an electronic. We gave each other an electronic hug. I think that was. I think that
it helped when we're farther away.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, maybe so. All right. Yeah, no, thanks. Thank y'all for listening. You can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Please, when you get there at Spotify, Apple, whatever, rate us, subscribe, tell us what you think. We love the feedback. In the meantime, Carlos, enjoy Florida. Keep up the great work down there. It's always fun to read you about baseball. I can always tell your heart, that's where your heart is. It comes through and it's fun to read. Get some sun, have some, I don't know. There's a really good burger place in Lakeland, by the way, little tiny diner south of town for what it's worth. But enjoy yourself, and we'll see you all next week right here with more Fruit Sports with Carlson Show.